So for about 10 minutes on Thursday, I was ready to drop literally everything in my life and somehow pay for plane tickets and Broadway tickets and a hotel to go and see a new Stephen Sondheim musical, a posthumous Stephen Sondheim musical on Broadway. And then within 10 minutes, this impossible dream turned out to be just that. None of it was real. It was an elaborate social media hoax that tricked me and a whole bunch of people for seemingly no reason whatsoever, until the reason became clear. What was this all about? We're going to talk about it today. Oh my god, hey! Welcome back to my Stagey YouTube channel. If you are meeting me for the first time, hello! My name is Mickey Joe and I am obsessed with all things theatre. And this is my Stagey YouTube channel where I make all sorts of theatre themed videos. I review shows that I have been invited to go and see here in the UK as a freelance theatre critic. I react to cast recordings and albums and movie musicals, and I talk about news and drama and gossip happening in the theatre industry worldwide, both in the West End and on Broadway. And today I was going to say I'm talking about a Broadway specific scandal, but I'm not really, because it wasn't real. None of it was real. The whole time, I'm talking specifically about a theatre Twitter drama, and something specifically that has been unfolding over the past few months. There is a whole lot of context needed to understand what happened on Twitter the other day when a new Sondheim musical was seemingly announced for Broadway. The whole thing turned out not to be true. There are reasons for this. There was an agenda. There were motivations. There are characters involved. The whole thing it's actually very theatrical. But if you notice this, if this is the first you're hearing about this, if you are as confused about this as I was to begin with, you are going to want to watch today's video. Now, if you enjoyed today's video, make sure to subscribe to my Stagey YouTube channel. I post more content like this all of the time. At the moment, my videos are really regular because there are so many exciting theatrical things for me to talk about. You can also find me on Twitter, on Instagram, and on TikTok at Mickey Joe Theatre. And if you really enjoyed today's video, you can use the super thanks button down below to give me a tip. That very much helps me to keep going as a Stagey content creator and make all of this free content. Now, before I get into what happened on Thursday and why this happened, let me quickly tell you about the sponsors of this video. So when this musical got announced, I was so shocked that I had to stand up. And when it turned out to be completely fake, I was so upset I had to sit down. Thankfully, I just got a new piece of furniture that allows me to do both of those things. Oh, you're about to find out how dumb that joke was, but it's absolutely true because I have just been sent an amazing adjustable standing desk from FlexiSpot. FlexiSpot sells a whole range of fantastic furniture, and one of their latest products is the FlexiSpot Standing Desk E7, and that's what I have been assembling over the weekend. I'm not kidding when I tell you this is now the best piece of furniture that I own. You're seeing me from a different angle today in my YouTube video because I am now using this desk to prop up my camera rather than the tripod that I was using before attached to a ring light. None of this matters to you because you never normally see it, but it's really exciting to me. Now, if you're intrigued at all about this desk at this point, don't worry, I am going to show you. Here is what it looks like. So this is the desk. You can get it with a range of different desktop sizes. I've gone with one hopefully wide enough that my boyfriend Aaron and I can both use it at the same time when we are working from home. You can adjust it to different heights. You can pre-save different settings, which means you can use it as a conventional sat-down desk, a standing desk, a camera tripod like I'm using it as now, or even a coffee table to eat off of. Thus far in my flat, I'm pretty sure it has already been used for all of those things. If you really want, you can use it to recreate elaborate musical numbers using stuffed monkeys. So in the description of today's video, you will see two links. The first is to this particular product, the FlexiSpot Standing Desk E7, and the other is to the FlexiSpot Christmas Flash Sale. Right now, there is up to 33% off. Check out those links down below. Get yourself some amazing home office furniture if, like me, you find yourself working from home and you need to spruce up your home office a little bit. Now, let's talk about the new Stephen Sondheim musical that lied about going to Broadway. So to understand what happened here, we need to understand two major pieces of context. The first is about this musical that is actually a real thing and has been in development by Stephen Sondheim and has been talked about in the news for many years. Most recently, it has been known under the working title of Square One, but it has had previous names beforehand, and Sondheim has been talking about this show for almost a decade, if not longer. Prior to this, the last full book musical that Stephen Sondheim wrote was Roadshow. I actually saw the European premiere of that when it opened over here at the Menier Chocolate Factory. So Sondheim was initially workshopping this musical under the title Buñuel. It was a collaboration with David Ives, and it was based on two different films from Spanish filmmaker Luis Buñuel, Buñuel, whose name I may be butchering, I apologise. This was going to be a 2-act musical. The first act was based on his 1972 film The Discreet Charm of the Bourgeoisie, and the second was going to be based on his 1962 film The Exterminating Angel. Both of these were set at surreal dinner parties, and Sondheim said that the musical is about trying to find a place to have dinner. I do not trust Stephen Sondheim for a second to give an accurate description of what this musical was going to be about, because this man would tell you that Follies is about a cocktail party among friends, when it is super not. He would tell you that Merrily is about writing a musical, when it's super not. All of his shows are always much deeper and much more devastating than these descriptions would have you believe. So in 2016, this had a workshop at the Public Theatre, which was the same venue where Roadshow had been workshopped back in 2008. Wicked director Joe Mantello was attached to the creative team as director, and longtime Sondheim interpreter Michael Cerveris, Tony Award-winning actor Michael Cerveris, was apparently part of the cast. Cerveris had this to say about the material. He said, "It was an appropriately surreal, unnerving, and often hilarious piece. Steve was, as ever, experimenting with some fascinating, complex musical structures, which David's sensibilities seemed to suit really well," that is, collaborator David Ives. He goes on to say, "The marriage with Buñuel felt pretty right for the times, and the world has only gotten darker and weirder since then. Don't we know that?" And yet, in April last year, it was reported that this musical was no longer in development, which was devastating news, only made worse when Sondheim tragically passed away later that same year. However, prior to having passed away, Sondheim had a televised interview with Stephen Colbert in which he revealed that he was still working on this, that he was still writing at the age of 90, and that this new musical had recently had another workshop, and that Nathan Lane and Bernadette Peters had apparently been attached. He was not forthcoming with many more details, but he shared an anecdote about how he was always going to keep writing even despite his advanced age. Now, this was very shortly before he would go on to pass away, the impact of which was felt hugely throughout the musical theatre community worldwide. Now, in the years since Stephen Sondheim passed away, there's been an outpouring of love for his works, and that has been reflected in a great many revivals happening on Broadway. Right now, a revival of Into the Woods is currently playing. That is due to close in January, but it has been extending, and it is just announced that it is going to be going on a national tour featuring many of its starry Broadway cast members. That's very exciting news, and I'm very jealous of all of you in New York right now and in the US. Currently, an off-Broadway revival of Merrily We Roll Along has just announced that it will be transferring to Broadway. This is the version directed by Maria Friedman at the Menier Chocolate Factory a few years ago here in London. I saw that production, and you're so lucky that you're getting it. And a major revival of Sweeney Todd, possibly Stephen Sondheim's most marketable, best known, at least commercially, his best known work, that is set to open in March on Broadway and already has a lot of awards buzz in terms of the Tony Award for Best Revival of a Musical. It's going to star Josh Groban and Annalee Ashford and reunites many of the creative team behind Hamilton. So amidst all of this, with Sondheim announcing that he had this new show that was being workshopped and then unfortunately tragically passing away, the question has arisen, are we ever going to see this show? Is the musical we now know to be called Square One ever going to make it to Broadway? Enter Sweaty Oracle. So if, like myself, you have, for the most part, avoided finding out who this is, let me tell you a little bit about the starring character in today's story. And no, it isn't Stephen Sondheim. Sweaty Oracle is a TikTok personality who leaks news and gossip and rumours about Broadway shows. He has an email address to which people can send in tips, and then he talks about these on his TikTok. He describes himself as a Broadway insider in as much as he is the person who receives this information because he has an email address that people send tips to, and it's worth saying that these are not always quantified. Back in the beginning, I became tangentially aware of him because people were talking about him a lot on Twitter. I don't spend an awful lot of time on TikTok. I'm hoping to in the new year. People keep telling me I need to, but I haven't really spent a lot of time on TikTok. But people were talking about him on Twitter and wondering how this guy seems to know everything, and speculating that a lot of the rumours that he had been posting had been coming from various chat boards and forums. But watching his videos and finding out what he had to say was definitely compelling for a lot of people. Now, from what I understand, it's at this point he starts to gain some prominence and he sets up the email to which people can send in tips. And so some people decided to test his journalistic integrity by sending in deliberately false information, much of which I gather he just ran in TikTok videos without verifying the source or getting any sort of confirmation or even just a second opinion on whether or not this may be true. I don't tend to engage much in the rumour mill and gossip around new musicals happening in London or in New York, but I do have some friends that do, and I know that one of the more responsible ways to do this is to make sure you're either getting this from a really credible source, like you know something's happening because you know that people are auditioning for it, or to get at least 2 or 3 people to say the same thing, and then it starts to seem slightly more credible. But in any case, the Sweaty Oracle has definitely become this polarizing figure within the world of theatrical social media. And last week, a Twitter account was set up for Square One, the Sondheim musical, announcing that news was going to be coming, which had everyone very, very excited. People who work in theatrical news were excited about this. Theatre TikTokers and social media personalities were very excited about this. And Sweaty Oracle announced on his TikTok page that, as he had previously said, this was going to be the news that the Stephen Sondheim musical Square One was in fact coming to Broadway. And sure enough, the next day, on Thursday, it was announced with some artwork that Square One was coming to Broadway with Nathan Lane and Bernadette Peters, the exact 2 names that we had heard about being attached to a workshop of it before. And that was so exciting, I lost my entire mind, and I lost all reason, including the part of my brain that would have told me to check for any additional information. The kind of additional information that is usually provided when a musical is announced for Broadway, like a director, like an exact date, like a venue, or like a credible way of getting tickets, because this Twitter account was not real. However, they had gone to the trouble of setting up a Twitter account, making fake artwork, making it all seem credible, teasing an announcement, timing an announcement, like you would see a legitimate Broadway show doing, buying a website domain name to make it seem credible, even just for a few minutes. And why? What was the reason behind all of this? But the answer to that question came before too long, when the Twitter account then posted simply, "Sweaty Oracle lied." Seemingly, this whole thing had been established just to illustrate that this man was not necessarily a credible source for theatrical news and rumours. At worst, this may have been set up to cause him some kind of embarrassment or undermine the integrity of what he posts on his TikTok. In case anyone was confused about this, the account then reposted a TikTok in which he had shared with complete confidence that Square One was going to be announcing its Broadway run, and then they just started having fun because they posted an acknowledgement of the situation, taking responsibility and identifying the creator of the account as Andrew Lloyd Webber, following it up with a bad Cinderella meme. And then finally an announcement for Glee the Musical headed to Broadway, starring Beanie Feldstein as Rachel Berry, James Corden as Will Schuester, and Hillary Clinton as Sue Sylvester. I can't tell you who is running this Twitter account. It has not yet been identified. As far as I can see, no one has revealed themselves as the perpetrator of this entire thing, so we can only speculate about what kind of gay man it might have been. But that is what has happened, and to his credit, the Sweaty Oracle appears to be taking all of this in his stride and is carrying on and is fighting back by insisting that, in spite of all of this, Square One is still coming to Broadway, because whoever made this Twitter account, theoretically, they have no way of knowing if this information was true or not. They've just jumped the gun on an announcement and positioned it to make it look like Sweaty Oracle has no idea about this and this is completely illegitimate news. However, because this all got so big, 3 people have allegedly been in contact with the Sweaty Oracle, whose name I really regret having to keep saying in this video. It's just not a nice sounding name. But 3 people have apparently emailed him with confirmation that Square One is in fact going to be heading to Broadway. At the moment, we only have his word for this. No one has come forward and said this publicly. Would this even be possible? Based on what we had heard, the musical was not close to completion at the time of Sondheim's passing. He described himself as a perennial procrastinator, and he said that he needed a collaborator to urge him to carry on with the project. He did not characterize this as a fully finished show. But of course, we also know this wouldn't be the first time that a musical had made its way to Broadway posthumously. Jonathan Larson's Pulitzer and Tony Award-winning musical Rent made its journey to Broadway after his death, tragically before the off-Broadway production could open. It was, however, much further along in development than we understand Square One as a musical to likely be. And yet, stranger things have happened, and if I know commercial theatre producers at all, I know that they will be itching to get their hands on the last musical that Stephen Sondheim ever wrote. Whether this means it needs to be finished in part by another musical theatre composer, I dread to think who will be appointed to carry on writing a Stephen Sondheim score. I cannot readily think of any kind of composers who are similar enough, who have the same kind of artistry and genius. Many have their own brilliance in their own ways, but they are distinctive enough in their style. There is no obvious successor to Stephen Sondheim who has ever written musicals and particularly written lyrics the way that he does. So if this was revealed to be in ongoing development, it would make me both hugely excited and distinctly nervous at the same time. But one thing seems certain, it is not going to be making its way to Broadway this coming season, which means we will not be getting a simultaneous Andrew Lloyd Webber new musical, Stephen Sondheim new musical, and Lin-Manuel Miranda new musical, all competing for the Best New Musical Tony Award, as much fun as that might have been. But that is my best explanation for all of this drama. I don't have much of an opinion on it. It was exciting and then devastating and then hilarious. I don't think it was this huge, terrible, amoral thing that they did. A lot of people were hugely critical of this Twitter account afterwards for getting everyone's hopes up. I thought it was funny. It made me laugh that this whole thing had happened and they got all of us in the theatre community. What did you think about all of this if you saw it unfolding on social media? And what do you think about the idea of a new Stephen Sondheim musical coming to Broadway after his passing? Let me know all your thoughts about this particularly bizarre chapter of theatre history down in the comments section. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to subscribe to my Staged YouTube channel for more theatre news recaps, reactions, and reviews. If you really enjoyed, you can use the super thanks button down below to give me a tip. That very much helps me as a Staged content creator to keep making regular free content. I hope that everyone is staying safe and that you have a stagey day. For 10 more seconds, I'm Mickey Joe Theatre. Oh my god, hey. Thanks for watching, have a stagey day. Subscribe!